Guys, we have an audience. I feel like they should just whoop in the background.
Yes.
I'm not used
Live
to it.
Yes.
Let's go.
Incredible.
We've got an
Incredible.
audience. Welcome to
Amazing.
Twigg and Jenkins. We've got an incredible crowd for the incomparable Chase Joynt. Wait, did I pronounce your last name correctly?
Can you imagine?
That would have been so embarrassing.
Can you imagine?
That would have been so embarrassing.
We would have gone with it.
Award-winning filmmaker, impeccable dresser.
Thank you.
And we're just so honored. And bra entourage.
Favorite people.
And not only that,
And
Twigg.
celebrity, obviously.
Of course. Twigg dressed up for you. Can we give a round of applause for this fit? This is maybe the best
Thanks,
Twigg
guys.
and Jenkins fit
Thanks, guys.
we've had.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I've carried this dress from LA to London to New York just to be here
For this
today,
moment.
for this exact moment.
Yes.
So,
Can't
It
wait for the
looks-
prom.
right. So I'm going to pick up my corsage
Mm-hmm.
and my prom date and then have a great little afternoon.
Yeah.
It looks beautiful. But you guys threw this awesome event last night. You got to tell everyone about it here. We got a film festival here. We had a happy hour. You've got your film premiering. DC doesn't get culture often.
That's one of those weird things, though. It's not exactly true, but I understand why you say that. Like there's a lot of great museums here, and like all the attending art and artists that help support that. But Chase does have a big film premiering tonight. Your latest film premiering at DC Docs Festival, and so his production company, my production company, work together quite a bit, and we threw a little party in celebration not only of your premiere, but also just getting to be in DC together.
Mm-hmm.
But tell us about the film, Chase.
State of Firsts.
Love the name.
Thank you. There was much debate about the name. I'd be very happy to tell you the additional contenders should we need more things to talk about.
Oh, well, I can't handle suspense. What were the other options?
One word statement titles like representative, which I actually think conceptually does
I
a
do
lot of
like
for
that.
us,
Yeah?
but is an SEO nightmare. Representative Sarah McBride doesn't get you very far on the internet.
Sure.
Congresswoman being another,
Love that.
which I think is vibing on other projects that are emerging in this moment, like Prime Minister, which I also understand, but on account of the interrogation of all things trans and gender, I had to refuse the
Sure.
Congresswoman of it all,
I like that.
in service of encouraging folks to make other kinds of connections. But yeah, State of Firsts, not only a wink and a nod to Delaware, but a real reckoning with McBride's position
God,
in
I
the
didn't get that.
political landscape.
Delaware, the first state. I'm
Delaware.
just dropping into that. Wow, that's too bad.
You clearly did not.
Now's the time. Now's the time.
On camera.
Yeah.
Great. Perfect.
You didn't grow up in the Northeast, Carrie Twigg. You're a Midwestern girl, you know?
Yeah.
You don't know the beauty that is the Delaware Welcome Center.
True.
Now
The
named
Joe Biden,
the
I've
Joe
been there.
Biden Welcome Center.
I've been there, driven through.
Yeah.
I've driven through.
Well, I just watched the film. I'm not kidding. It's Father's Day this morning. I woke up, I ate breakfast with my kids, and then I watched your film and cried because Carrie knows that this is sort of the MO for me. But really just a beautiful, beautiful film. Like, you guys should be so proud because we know Sarah. Sarah's been on the podcast. She interned for us.
Sarah's Brad's intern, which is
She
wild.
worked with us at the White House. And I don't know. I was a little bit worried because when you make films like this, in your head, you're like, how do you make a narrative film of a friend? And I thought you guys just nailed it. I thought it was so beautifully done. So anyway, kudos. It's so exciting. Twigg, when did you see it? You've seen it.
I would have seen a rough cut. When was that? December? It was kind of more of like a fine cut.
Depends on who you ask.
Sure. fine. But I've seen it a handful of times. But I actually don't know the origin story. How did you come to make this film?
So one of the producers on the project, Jenna Kelly, went to American University with Sarah and was loosely aligned in friend groups and had always been tracking the potentials of a project. And then when Sarah made the turn for the congressional run, Jenna approached and did a little, hope you remember me and still like me enough to consider this as an option. And Sarah was very warm to the idea from the start.
Great.
But that intimacy, that early attachment to Sarah's political becoming, I think was foundational to brokering the kind of access that we had in the film.
It's rare
Yes.
for And we tried it so many different times. Like when I was at the White House, we had so many people approach us to film behind the scenes. And in some cases, a lot of them were always like, we want to film the president, but a lot of it was also just, we want to film the staff. We want to film, can you connect us to this congressperson? We want to film them. And the answer was always no, because there's always just that chance of, overexposure, misrepresentation. If things do go wrong, you're there, you're seeing it, you're a fly on the wall. And so it really did feel like she trusted you guys as filmmakers, because there are moments in this film that are beautifully vulnerable. So did you feel like you had that trust from the beginning, or did you feel like you kind of grew into that?
I mean, I think as a filmmaker, I don't really believe in behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I think it's a fiction. I think we're bringing cameras in and we're asking people to do something that is absolutely out of the ordinary logic of the rest of their life, regardless of how baked into their circumstances or surrounds they might be. And so I never presumed that we had behind the scenes access. There was very clear boundaries. There was very clear places where we were not to go and that we would respect. And so instead, it's about brokering a kind of ethical orientation to your subjects such that they move toward you in step, which I think reads on camera like behind the scenes or like never before encountered intimacy. But in fact, it's a product of the choices that you're making all along. And so absolutely in the beginning, in no way would I expect Sarah or anyone around her to trust me or anyone else who, to your point, is there to document things, and in the logic of documentary, there to document things when they are not understood to be documented in that way.
Right.
What happens when the camera disappears for a moment. And so it was a project and a process of it continuing to show up, but also making very explicit why I was choosing to make the project that I was making, who I was to the questions of the project. And I did not say yes to this project because I thought it would be interesting to make a biopic of a single person at a particular moment in time. It's not my orientation to telling stories about the world in which we live. And so from the start, I was thinking, how do we constantly locate Sarah in a context of her family, within her local, within the national, within broader moves being made in and around transness and trans community. And so anytime you feel like the film is slipping toward, it's a story about a person, we snap you back out into a context so that you're constantly having to reroute how you feel about her and not let it just ever be about her, because it's not. And so to return to your question about behind the scenes, I don't think that she's thinking about on screen and off screen behind the scene,
not at all.
And so the film has to actually be in step with that, or else it's going to feel forced and it's going to feel predatory. Like the camera will start to feel like it's taking something from her or those around her in a way that I strongly don't believe in.
Did you hesitate to do the project?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very tricky time to be telling stories about trans people. I think reckoning with the politics of the Democratic Party, understanding the geography of Washington, the geography of political office, the architecture of political campaigns are not spaces for genre-bending techniques. They really are, routinized. We understand what these documentaries look like, what they feel like. Yeah. We understand the expectations of the subjects. And what I'll say about that is people don't expect much. They expect it to be glossy. They expect it to be packaged. They expect that the candidate or person at the center has some kind of creative control. And even if they don't, you're battling all of those audience expectations of the form itself. And so understanding those limitations, the question was, what else is possible in this space? And it's not flipping the genre on its head. It's actually thinking critically about the genre and trying to implicate the genre of verite, of journalistic media along the road.
And I also think there's one of the things that I love about present day documentaries. Well, I love about documentaries in general, but an archive is a statement of value, and I think that we're alive in a politic of the politics of the moment. And this is the horse that I beat to death, unfortunately. But the politics of the moment demands a really particular way of driving a narrative in order to ensure some sort of political outcome, and whether that's on an individual campaign or just on the broader things that we're seeing. you know, all week I've just been like, where are the doc crew? Like, who is sending film crews out to No Kings? Who is sending film crews out to the Trump military parade? Because you know that he's going to release an action style thriller trailer about what an amazing day the parade was, no matter what happened, right? We know it was sparsely attended. And yet, like, that will not be the narrative that they're just be like, oh, maybe no one wanted to come to this. It's going to be like, it was the greatest day in American history or whatever they're going to say. And I think about documenting moments like this as it relates to Sarah as part of just a canon of storytelling that we have to be willing to tell about political choices that we make. You can go back and look. I love a political doc. I've like watched all of them. I read all the gossipy books. Like I just am such a nerd for it. And you go back and you can actually like trace a lineage of thinking. Like if we were talking about what's the War Room. We were talking about a street fight, and then War Room is the Clinton one, right? If you watch that, you can understand the moment that we're in presently a little bit better, right?
Yeah, sure.
And so I'm so happy that you made this film and you agreed to do it, giving all those constraints and potential pitfalls, because I think we'll look back on that film and be able to have our record of like, no, you did say that, Marjorie. Like you did do like what on, you know, and we did make the resulting choices as a result, or the tensions were this particular way. And there's just not, I don't think we're doing enough of it. And I think for all your reasons, there's so many great filmmakers that don't want to get into it and aren't willing to sort of reckon with the challenge of making films like this. But we need so much of it.
Yeah. And I feel like the film runs on this razor wire of representation, right? It's trying to think about all of the ways in which transness or identity is upheld as significant and important and influential, and also all of the fictions and fallacies of its important, all the ways in which it actually collapses under the weight of its own signification. And there also is a person who is trying to navigate all of the ways in which she is being coded and rearticulated by the media culture in particular, but also by those around her. And I think a lot about the Obama film, The Final Year.
The Final Year, yeah.
And as another comp, I was thinking about a very contained period of time with, quote, intimate access to a group of people and the sort of devastating downfalls of their expectations in and along that shooting. And to your point about documentation and archive, I think that we are in another moment of intensity around the politics of trans representation in particular, and this serves as another tool or insight into the complexity of how we move.
And I also think occupies a really sort of, and I don't mean this about the film, but like Sarah as a relatively, maybe I shouldn't say this, as like a relatively banal figure, right? Like just sort of fine as just like a political figure. She's not lighting the world on fire, and yet she has achieved something that's really impressive. But you don't watch her and like young Barack Obama in the making, or like that's the next great star of the Democratic Party. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't have said any of that. However, and I also think that in a time when entertainment and entertainment value, we're watching so many elected officials and public figures like flock towards the most entertaining, most reality TV, most sort of sensationalist version of a public persona. To see someone just like there's that scene where she's filming the video outside of Wawa. She's like, oh, another cringy like elected official attempt at TikTok. Like it's so basic. And it was actually, but I felt very sort of reassured by like, okay, you're dropped into the reality of the moment that it is worth being public facing, even though it comes at a cost, which I don't want to be naive about, and though not sort of turning it into a circus at which you're the center of, or you're the main spectacle.
Yeah, and I mean, that scene's such a great example, I think, in the film of a layered approach to the politics of visibility. So on one hand, you're watching our camera watch her camera represent her, and then we flip you inside of the Wawa where she is recognized by someone who is just at the coffee stand and oh, let me take that back. She's not, in fact, recognized. She's in an engagement where she doesn't know how this person is reading her, and then comes out of the Wawa to talk about a kind of politics of recognition where there are signs that are being put up all over the state.
And the only reason he approaches her is because you are filming.
Because there's a camera.
Because there's a camera on her.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Multi-layered.
And so how many ways in which can we actually return you to that politics of visibility such that you understand that it's like not about transness, actually, that it's about something much more insidious, and the role that the cameras play in our ability to interpret people who are doing this kind of work.
And there's over 500,000 elected officials in the United States. Yeah. Like the scale of elected officials it requires to like make America work from the hyper local level to, you know, cities, counties, towns, states, federal. And so I think that there's also that banality is actually the more reflective of the 98% of the people who hold elected office in this country, of just like, who are you? Like, I think I know you, but like, what are you doing here?
Right.
And you have like a bit of recognition, but not really sure. And I think the vast majority have like a pretty decent time. People are like, oh, like that guy in the Wawa. She's like, oh man, I know that must be annoying. Yeah. Well, good luck.
Yes,
like didn't ask her about what party, didn't ask her a single, was just
he
like.
felt bad for her. Yeah. He was like, that must suck to
that
have these cameras. That must
be so annoying to have these cameras. Like, oh, I know you can't wait for election day to be over. Like, I know it's annoying, so it must be annoying for you.
Yeah.
And I think that is also an important thing to see in this moment, regardless of Sarah's identity, of just like she's much more reflective of what civic leadership in the country looks like generally than what dominates the media landscape.
And I think this is what the film is doing, and this is also what she is doing, is attempting to redraw our attention to the way in which folks like Marjorie Taylor Greene are weaponizing cameras and representation to forward their transphobic, racist agendas, that it is actually a lensed approach to that vitriol.
You could not have predicted, or maybe you did. So when did you start filming? And was the, as you enter a project, you're always, I'm sure in your head, like, all right, this is the first act, second, this is how we're going to close. We knew that there was a campaign for her to make history.
Yep.
I don't think that anyone expected, or maybe you guys did, that the trans issue would be I think probably the most cultural, and in terms of money spent and all of the hundreds of millions of dollars of negative ads, it became the dominant issue of the campaign, not just Sarah's campaign, but all campaigns, in particular the presidential. When all of this is happening, are you guys like, oh, this is good? Or are you know what I mean? Like, as a filmmaker and a storyteller, and does it change anything? Does it change the contours of what you are deciding to film, other storylines? Like, how do you remain flexible when you're making something like this?
My first day of shooting was the morning after the Biden-Trump debate.
Oh my God.
And
is that
I was
true?
just like, thank you very much. And so I quite literally met Sarah for the first time she was wearing this vintage Obama campaign t-shirt as she was processing the news and the media rollout of the sort of downfall and long wake of that event.
Wow.
And I understood it to be a fracture point that actually does in fact open our film, but there was many ways that the film could have opened. It actually did, even down to the cut that you saw, Carrie. But it made a lot of sense to me, if we were going to move chronologically, that was a kind of propulsive out of the gates. What is happening to the Democratic Party? What is happening in the presidential election? And what role, therefore, the unanswered question is, will she play? And to your point, I think any trans person who is politically engaged understood that the onslaught of anti-trans violence and legislation was upon us already.
Yeah.
But we could not have anticipated the ways in which Sarah, as a body in the world, would become a central target upon which many of these moves were being leveraged. And so in the storytelling, you're always open to what will emerge, but I understood that I had access to an extraordinary and at times devastating archive of media that was being generated alongside us. So we have our camera, which is embedded in the campaign, and then we have the storm of media that is interpreting. And the question there becomes, where do we go in this mass of narrative possibility? And so there were earlier iterations of the cut, which were much more deeply engaged in the tensions between activist and electoral strategies for social change, especially in and around the DNC when we didn't know, and when Kamala Harris was another propulsive force, another kind of first that was running alongside. But then when everything collapsed toward the bathroom bans, there was no question that that was where the film needed to go. And then new questions emerged, which is, what role can our film play in telling a different kind of story about what's happening here that you cannot access by continuing to mine the media landscape that already exists?
Did you have a end date? Like, did you know you wanted to shoot for until March 1 of 2025, regardless of what happened?
We always knew that we would shoot through the inauguration.
Smart.
But the momentums around Sarah in particular, and the ways in which she was being misgendered, and her first many weeks on the job, required that we stayed shooting.
Yeah.
Did you have an intuition about who would win, whether Trump or Harris would win?
I think I knew going into that night that Trump was going to win, for sure. You?
Yeah. I spent the last month in Philly working with the Pennsylvania team. And I think the first day I got my briefing, I showed up, all these old heads were showing up to come help out and just kind of be fresh blood for the young kids who were just had been through it, working on campaigns is extraordinarily hard. A bunch of us who'd been in campaigns but hadn't been around for a while came back to work full time, and I sort of got my lay of the land in Pennsylvania. I think I called Brad and was like, we're going to lose. Yeah. This is a disaster.
Yes.
It's really bad. But then I got the juice.
I was just going to say, but then you got high off of the organizer, got high off your own supply. And then you were like, we're going to win.
Yeah. And then sort of the last couple of days, I was like, no, we're not. Yeah. I maintain that I think she could have eked it out if she'd had 6 more weeks. But I just don't know that. It was just, and probably not. I mean, even then, but
there's a moment.
I don't know that she would have gotten as beat.
Yeah, there's a moment that doesn't exist in the film, but that I've saved to disclose on your podcast.
Perfect.
Sarah has an old friend from college named Joe who appears. You might know Joe. I don't know Joe's last name. He appears in the film in a few different ways. He ran the numbers for her primary, a scene that also doesn't exist in the film. And she calls him in the middle of that war room election results night after she knows she's going to win. He's working the Georgia desk for Harris. And he's on speaker, and she says, how's it going over there? And he says, complicated. And that's it. And for a really long time, it lived in the film because it was so dynamic and everything you needed to know about that moment existed. But as we continued to cut, it's all there already. We actually didn't need that beat, and we didn't need Joe as another character who you don't know and who apparently I still don't know. We didn't need all of those extra layers, but it was a real deadening moment in the room where you felt everyone shift on account of what he had said in one word on that call.
Yeah. I mean, I've ranted about this on this podcast quite a bit, so I don't need to rehash the beef that I have with a lot of the senior team from the Harris campaign. But I mean, they were briefing Barack Obama, they were briefing Eric Holt, they were briefing megastars of the Democratic Party and saying that we had already won days out. They're based on early votes, we've already won. So what I was seeing on the ground in Philly, I was just
where is this coming from?
Yeah, but they're speaking with such confidence.
Yeah. It's a bummer.
So the gaslighting was real.
It's a bummer. Yeah. I have so many questions. But I want to, as a filmmaker, because it's a really good point you're making, which is lifting the veil a little bit and explaining we had this really great thing, we took it out, right? There's a certain such level of discipline, because there's so much you can include in a film like this. What do you think you learned from the process of making the film about this moment? Not to be super cheesy here, but I mean, this film, I hope everyone sees this film. I hope anyone who is a Democratic organizer, anyone who works in organizational politics, anyone who attended a No Kings march, there is a huge generational fight right now. And Sarah almost embodies the fight in so many different ways. Yes, the target on her back for who she is, but then also simultaneously the discipline that she has in understanding her role, you know? And anyway, I was just so curious because I felt like every time she was speaking to the camera, it felt almost like a confessional. And to Twigg's point, I feel like a lot of these political docs, it feels like a campaign ad. There's like a very different kind of conversation with the camera. And do you feel like you've learned something from making this film? Or do you feel like...
Specifically about politics? American politics.
About American politics right now, you know, through the lens of Sarah.
I think one of the things that felt most challenging to me throughout shooting and making and exhibiting the film, but one of the things that I feel most energized by in this moment is that everything is in the footage. Like, you want to feel critical of the Democratic Party and feel like electoral politics is not the way to liberation. It's in the footage. You want to feel like representation matters and that seeing a trans person in power has sociopolitical potential. It's in the footage. And so how can I as a director and can we as a team create a film wherein you have an opportunity to read yourself into the world of the film and also recognize that the film has its own argument. And the film is not telling you how to interpret the moment, but rather is saying, if you are going to take on this position or this opinion, what are you going to do with that opinion when you also have to contend with this? And so the structure and building blocks of the film is such that we're constantly routing you across those lines. And that's down to shot style. That's down to shot design. It's down to like thinking about the logic of the foreground and the background. There's a shot in the inauguration, and this is an excellent time to shout out our cinematographer, Melissa Langer, who was really thinking about the layered approach to the visual language of the film such that you can be distracted by the MAGA paraphernalia of blinking lights in the foreground. But what does it mean when you look up and you see Trump's face on a big screen at the back of the frame, as far away from the camera as possible, and yet it is the most dominant image that is overcoming everything else in the scene. It's an example of one of many times where we're attempting to draw your attention to, like, away actually quite literally from the flashing lights to the much more powerful and significant image-making moments of this time. And so it would be very easy, for example, to represent Sarah as someone who's on a mission and on a journey, and to do that with a camera means to position her at the center of the frame, to follow her from a specific kind of a distance. And so really playing with focal length, playing with the structure of our scenes mattered. Precisely because to interpret the film otherwise, we have to give you a chance to see other things in tension with who she is and what she's doing. And the times where you're, I think, feeling the intimacy of what she's offering, she's most often in her car. And that car emerges as a space that is both public and private. Right? It is something where she is both in the world and out of the world simultaneously. And you cannot plan for those moments. You have to recognize that that's actually where she is doing her own kind of work, because of course she lives in her car and is doing her own kind of processing. And so how can the film invite you into that space? Not because the film creates that space, because the film recognizes that space as a portal or an opportunity.
She's so self-aware too, in that those sort of like car scenes. I also love a great car shot. It's just like my favorite thing in the world. And you have so much of it. And it does feel like almost like a confessional. And she is talking it out to herself, right? And she's sort of reckoning, to your point, around making the case, or does the film make the case that representation matters? And there's moments in the film where she acknowledges that representation is also bullshit, can be bullshit.
At the very
and
least,
not
it's
enough.
limited.
And it's limited, right, exactly.
Yeah.
Or that it's not enough. So you're right, there are no, you do a very good job of allowing the viewer. And I would also throw in there, you know, folks like my parents who are Trump voters. Like, I would love for them to watch this film because they've never met a trans person in their life. They have no idea. All they know is Fox News, you know? And I think that, to Twigg's point, I actually do think Sarah is pretty dynamic in her own way, but she doesn't, you're right, she's not like a Cory Booker level of going for it.
The Jersey of it all.
You know what I mean? Like, Cory goes for it. Cory is like
a little overly emotional.
He's like razor's edge of cringe all of the time. Exactly. Whereas Sarah's just herself, you know, like she's very Delawarean. She's just very, this is who I am. And I think that, again, like, I'm so excited for people to see the film. I think it's really, really important for people to see the film. I also think it's really important, not to call out some of our Democratic Party elders, I think it's really important for some of our Democratic Party elders to see this film, because I think that what I have found in the wake of the election is this really dumb one-to-one ignorance around, this is why we lost. This is why Democrats lose, because we're too woke. And that's not just from Fox News. That's from people who run the DNC. That's from people who raise a shit ton of money for the party, and they have limited exposure too, you know? And so anyway, not to get on my high horse, but I think everyone should go watch this film. And I won't name names.
Why have a podcast if you're not going to name names, though? It's why.
And also, it's in the film. They will
yeah.
feel themselves in the film.
Yeah,
sit down.
Absolutely.
Sure.
You said something earlier that I think is really important, which is like setting up the conditions on set, and for you as a director, that allowed Sarah to move towards you as a subject. And I think that one of the massive problems of the Democratic Party is they don't actually understand much about what goes into really crafting good storytelling. I think we have a lens that's like, oh, we'll just throw up some ads in the standard way and not sort of recognize the fact that people are consuming information, are consuming stories, and meaning making about their world and about the country in a fundamentally different way than like between Labor Day and November.
Yeah.
And part of that is incumbent on elected officials or just leadership in general, if you want to be a civic leader, like moving towards the camera, moving towards the storytelling of it, as opposed to we're just not alive at a time, like it's just not right now, it's not the trend right now, it's not the time right now where you can have this really meaningful distance and separation, right? People don't want to pedestal elected officials, they don't want them to feel distant, they want them to feel close and have a parasocial relationship. And again, I'm not naive to the fact that that costs something. And yet, I think it is perhaps our only way to solve across lines the issues that we need as a party, so that we're not, anyway. And so for you as someone who, this is not your only film, like you've obviously been making films for a long time and are already working on another one, right?
Breaking news.
Saved it for the pod. I would love if you could just give us a little bit of, as you applied your filmmaking expertise into a political, like, what are your observations about what works and what doesn't work about political storytelling, not just in that craft perspective that you just walked us through, but in sort of like a broader, like, what do you see electeds do or political leaders do that works really well? What do you see them do that doesn't? Like, where did you have any friction with Sarah about, like, I would really like it, it would be great if we could tell the story this way, but you're not giving me what I need. Like, that's a lot of questions in one.
Yeah,
Discuss.
Totally. Okay. Bring me back if I go too far astray. I mean, I think one of the foundational commitments early on in shooting was that I was like, we're not going to shoot sit-down interviews with her. She spends her whole life sitting down in front of a camera, positioned like I can clock this lens and tell you the things that I feel. And that is actually her training. And therefore, in my opinion, and this is no insult to her, we are going to learn nothing new from that encounter.
Agreed.
And so what happens if we keep that setup away for as long as possible? And then in our film, spoiler, we land you in an interview chair with her where she is lit appropriately and flanked by flags. And for those of you who are into the camp of it all, you're going to see the wink that I offer you. And for those of you who don't, you're going to be like, oh, she's arrived at her job, you know? And either way, that actually does work. Like either modes. And I'm not making fun of the folks who say like she's arrived at her job, because she has arrived at her job. Like again, both of those things are true. But by withholding that kind of interview setup, it, to me, is a directorial commentary on the ways in which we come to encounter political subjects in this genre, through this medium. And so, therefore, this is how the car emerges as an interview of a different kind, where if you're paying attention to the logic of that car scene, the only thing I ask her is, how are you? That's the question that drives the entire engagement. I'm not asking her policy questions. I'm not asking things about her platform, because all of those beats are represented otherwise. So to get to your question, I have a lot of suspicion around modes of representation of this kind. And, you know, AOC very beautifully arrives in our film in the third act and, you know, uses a phrase like, I want to clock those motherfuckers. And the word motherfuckers is never going to come out of Sarah McBride's mouth. And what does it mean that the word motherfuckers comes out of AOC's mouth in proximity to Sarah McBride in this moment where they're reckoning around a set of similar issues about being firsts, about being minoritized subjects, about being young? There's all this layered camaraderie that is being brokered in that exchange. And yet you can also encounter two very different approaches to political office, to political representation. And to return us to the wah-wah moment, Sarah is not off the cuff live streaming from her house in the way that we encounter an AOC who's saying, hi, everybody, I understand shit's going down. I'm going to spend 2 hours of my time here trying to talk you through and respond in real time to comments that are coming at me. And I'm not saying that AOC is without her own strategy and without her own very sharp acknowledgement and understanding of what she is doing. Sorry, the film studies part of me is like, that is a sit-down interview of a different kind that she is architecting and sculpting, and I understand that. And yet, the performance of it makes you feel differently about it when you encounter it. And this, to me, is related to the early conversation about behind the scenes. In no way is AOC letting us behind the scenes in her life. Are you kidding? And I don't think she should. But rather, she's brokering a different kind of intimacy through a performance with the camera that is working against a history of framed interviews and encounters with politicians, which have them so far distanced from reality and so far distanced from the material aspects of your life and your world and your family that you feel like they are alien to you.
And and to that point, I think feels much more of the moment. Like I think it is responsive to a demand that voters have told us that they want. Voters want to feel that intimacy. They want people to feel close to them. And so anyone who is not at least attempting to communicate in the way people have asked you to communicate with them, I think is going to not be as successful as potentially they could be.
But
please,
I do think it's important in this conversation, I believe all the things that I just said, to also recognize that Sarah's opacity or strategic lack of desire to disclose and perform in certain ways is stitched to her identity as a trans person, right? We are required as trans people, as a mode of survival, to remain strategically opaque. And there are many, many reasons why one is not afforded the same kind of opportunities or flexibilities because of a media storm that will surround and pick apart various versions of your self-making if you allow them to be seen. And so I just think it's a really important moment to also think of the pressures that are put on someone like Sarah in particular, or someone like a Laverne Cox in a different kind of media moment in the years and decade that precedes someone like Sarah, where we have a kind of visual language and an architecture to understand transness and the politics of first, where we have to be thinking critically about the intersections of race and class as they map onto the representational politics of someone like Sarah McBride in this moment. And so, again, this is about the structure of interviews. This is about access. This is about storytelling. And I think there are large unanswered questions about the ways in which we should approach these kinds of stories in the future.
And I also think that if more people, if we had 30 AOCs, that lessens the pressure on basically everybody across the board.
Sure.
You know, if there were more people, as someone who is invested in seeing the left in whatever way that ends up being constituted be more successful electorally, I think that our greatest challenge at this moment is being able to articulate a meta narrative that voters respond to, which we see really effectively done on the right. Effective, not fair, not true, not happy, not anything I agree with, but just effective.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm just sort of always looking for ways that we can bring more people into an understanding of the like incredible rigor that goes into figuring out how to communicate well and clearly.
But I think Chase's film does that
Absolutely.
in a way, and certainly does it, but I think there's a lot to learn. I think there's a lot for the class of people that Twigg and I find ourselves entangled with a lot. Right, because there's such a linear. I love that. No, I didn't even recognize it. I didn't clock it until you said it right now, which is you did not do any sit down interviews with Sarah. That is like the modus operandi of every politician. Because you're sitting, you've got the flag in the background, you're looking right down the barrel, and there's a lot to learn because the visual language you created is fun. Not fun. What's the right word? It's enticing. It feels like a Friday Night Lights episode. You know, it feels like you're in the car with her. Is that a reference
you've been getting a lot?
You know? I love it so much, and I sincerely hope that Melissa Langer listens to this to take the compliment.
It feels great. It feels like you're with her. You're in the car with her. I mean, you physically are.
Yes.
The other thing I love about this film, too, is I feel like it's almost like a prequel to what is happening right now. I think a lot of times you find these political docs, and by the third act, you're like, all right, I know what's going to happen. Yes. It's over. With this film, you get to the end, and Trump wins. Genders, trans military officers are no longer, like trans sports. Like it becomes this barrage of, to your point, Sarah's now in this job, and now the fight is more vital. The fight is more important than ever. And it's like, I want to watch part 2. Like, I want to see, beyond the bathrooms and the bullshit, which I think Sarah used that term a couple of times. There are real attacks on trans people right now at a level that we never, I think maybe we anticipated. But the executive orders, I think the brashness of this administration attacking trans people, and it comes at the very end of the film, right? Like 5 minutes left in the film, you're hearing every executive order that comes down the pike. Yeah. So, will there be more? Will you still follow Sarah, or are there other stories to tell? I mean, it doesn't have to be through Sarah's story. To your point, it's not just about Sarah. It's about this moment.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of ways that people might talk about this film as a campaign film, but I wonder, I'm just coming to this right now, but I wonder if we can think about it more as a doorstep film. Like it's something that actually leaves you at this precipice, at this moment. Yeah. And I don't think that there's a volume 2 of a film that focuses or centers around Sarah McBride.
Right.
I do think that we are in a moment where we need, to your point, many more stories that are critically interrogating the politics of the present and routing it through history, but really thinking critically about what's unfolding right now.
Yeah.
And I think that needs to come in various forms. I think the documentary feature is one, and I think a lot about audience as it relates to these questions about what should come next. And I think that we're in a moment of reckoning. And one of the conversations that I have behind the scenes with a lot of my trans artist makers is all of us felt at one point, speaking to the politics of representation, like we were being pigeonholed as trans makers who were only responsible and or good at telling trans stories, and really feeling rebuffed by and strategically desiring to move elsewhere to sculpt our own brand identities as creators, as people capable of having thoughts about more than one thing at the same time. And it's fascinating to me that many of us are also thinking, no, actually, what happens if we double down on what we're doing and actually return to a politic that is precisely about transness? And then when I'm saying transness, I'm thinking far beyond the identificatory capacities of that word, to think about genre, to think about politics, to think about style, to think about like a movement across and towards something else, that actually transness is the place we need to center and stay in service of some of your questions.
Is that an open question for you? Because I feel that way around like black shit, right? It's like I had someone the other day, I was talking to them about some stuff I want to do moving forward. And she's like, and so are you going to continue to make things for black women? By black women, for black women? And I was just like, I'm going to give you a gentle correction. Yeah. And it was just sort of like, right. It would not occur to me to organize someone in that way. And I think that's because of my own background, my identity, how I approach the world. But it would not occur to me to like look at someone and be like, well, surely, Brad, you're only doing Black Korean culture work, right?
Only Blasian stories. Nothing else.
But I feel like I wrestle with that tension a lot of like, but that is who I am, what I find myself interested in. Anything I make is made by a black woman anyway. Like you can't separate, nor would I want to separate myself from those things. Yes. Nor do I want to feel like I'm cowering because someone else can't think in an expansive way. Then I'm supposed to, I don't know. I really wrestle with like, what am I actually in reaction to?
Yes. Yeah.
At any given moment in time.
I'm having a memory of one of our very first Zooms as we were getting to know each other. And I'm going to evacuate the story of its specifics to make sure that we're not insulting anyone. And we were talking about this very tension as production companies who are set up to think critically about difference and minoritized subjects and representational practices that exist outside of the mainstream that are pushing back against a kind of mainstream politic. Carrie disclosed that as part of her practice in that moment, she would put on, I love that you don't even know where I'm going.
I have no idea.
Exactly. I can tell. That she would put on a show and let it play while she was cooking because she wanted to contribute to the numbers, the watch numbers on a streaming platform, but genuinely did not appreciate the show. Did not need it. And I loved it. It told me a lot about you. And it also, I really understood. And I have my own version of this, of the way in which we speak about work in public, the way in which we speak about other artists, the kind of cohort-based or coalition-based politic of being in the world by and through and against these identity constraints, but like what's at stake in saying that you're for something or against something, or that you move within or toward a community and or are trying to break away from it, right? Like you can't even talk about it without feeling like you're stepping in mud. And so I'm energized to know that you're in that conversation still, because I think that the choices we make now really matter as it relates to those questions.
And I think it's like I give myself a lot of permission to change my mind. Like it's a seasonal, thing. Sometimes I'm a little bit happier thinking about. We saw a film recently, and it's not the.
We're doing great.
Radical intellectual take that I think Chase would have made, or I like to think I would have made. And yet I think it will be effective to a particular group, right? And so I think I'm constantly wrestling with like that coalition building and bridge building versus just like doing whatever the fuck I want to do for the people who are paying, who don't need to be handheld and led along the path. Yeah. And I think it's really hard as makers and people who are existing in this culture. And America's so big. So if you're attempting to change something or evolve something about this place, getting both work is necessary, right?
And it's a great way to get back to state of first in some ways, because I think that it was a question and problem of the film is, who are you attempting to engage through this kind of storytelling? And it was very humbling for me to be in a rough cut screening, for example, and to have reflected back what the film was doing and therefore what the film was not doing.
Interesting.
And to really think like, okay, well, what about this is about my politics and the problems of my own political fixations, and what about this is actually what the film is telling us it needs to be, or what the film can do. And it's only through deep collaboration with our studio audience that I was able to find my way through up until the premiere of like really trying to settle into a place of feeling very humbled by some of the problems, and also feeling the new opportunities on account of being in the world with a film like this, which is very different from the other kinds of documentaries that I make and other kinds of questions that I ask, but potentially generative in ways that I hadn't totally understood.
I have a question maybe for both of you, and this is going to be maybe an impossible question to answer, because I think that Sarah and the film wrestles with it, and there is no perfect answer. There is no silver bullet. But I think we do find ourselves looking back, right? There are all these books being written about what went wrong in the campaign, what we did wrong culturally speaking, and not reaching out to young men, or not going on enough podcasts, apparently. What
I have opinions on that.
I think everyone has opinions on that, what could the Democratic Party have done better when every single day people like my parents were being deluged with bullshit trans hate ads? From my vantage point, it seemed like the campaign and then Kamala Harris just tried to ignore it fully. There were never any responses to it, either in paid media, and there certainly weren't responses to it in interviews at the Democratic convention. It just became this, we don't want to talk about it. And by the way, that was also the strategy with regards to immigration as well. The other side had mass deportation signs at their convention. What do? We don't even talk about the issue at all. We're just going to go like this. I hate to break it to you. That didn't work.
Based on what?
Didn't work.
On what evidence? What's
we got our asses kicked. Just ignoring it is not a strategy. It just isn't. But with that said, I think there are a lot of well-intentioned, well-meaning people in that headquarters that didn't know what to do. So I'm going to ask you two. You're running paid media, or you're running, surrogates, or you're running the culture program in that moment. What could they have done? What would you advise them to have done in that moment?
Chase, welcome to Twigg and Jenkins.
Thank
you for being
here. I just cannot wait to pivot this back to you. And I am going to answer your question as it relates to the problems of the film, because I think that it's central. So when we were building the film, we had sequences called the Democratic Blame Game, where we were trying to negotiate this very question. And there's a clip in the film of Kamala Harris in a sit-down interview where the interviewer says, "Do you believe that trans people should have access to gender-affirming care?"
She couldn't answer.
And she's like, and then we snap you to social media where people say, the answer to this question is yes. Trans people deserve access to gender-affirming care.
Yes.
Right? That's the move of the film, is to say that actually there are answers to these questions that should be clear and direct. And we can show you avenues through which people are approaching this issue differently. And so I don't feel like I'm cheating your question by avoiding the sort of broader politics of the Democratic Party. But for me, it's how do we use tools of cinema, tools of documentary to afford you a different opportunity to think about pathways out of these jams and moments. And I just think that we are in a world full of alternative possibilities and answers to some of these questions, and that there were people being very clear and very strategic about the role that trans rights were playing in and around the campaign. And we cannot unstitch the fact that Kamala Harris's answer to that question was, I think we should follow the law. And then if you just look to the law and see what the law is doing as it relates to trans people, trans rights, trans healthcare, you can see that it is an insufficient and, extraordinarily violent answer to that question.
Yes.
And so that's my approach, is sort of like, how many ways in which can we architect a scene so that you as an audience member can be reckoning with the the silver bullet, as you say as well.
I mean, that
nailed it.
You know?
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Well done.
But I mean, I think it also goes. There's the question of what should she have done over the course of that 100 days. There's a question, I think, that goes back a lot further, which is
That too. Yeah.
We have been the Democrats have had a failure to reckon with the reality of America for 15 years in any meaningful way, sort of in the post, even Barack Obama, we talked about this in a different episode. Like, we were in the White House during the Obama years, like, senior leadership of the Obama era kept being like, the fever's going to break on the Republicans. Like, they're going to start working with us. And it was like, no, they will not, you guys. Like, quit saying that. It's not true. Mitch McConnell he's just like, I will never work with you. And then we would be in the White House like any day now. Any day. We're going to provide them with the right statistics, and they're going to come around.
If we deport another 1.5 million,
just deport a few more people.
Comprehensive immigration reform is right around the corner.
Like, it was just delusional. Yeah. And so I feel like we have been in a large-scale delusion for quite some time about the reality of the country and what people are trying to hear, and then also the way in which they hear information, right? And I think, to exactly what you're saying, there is a very well-earned reputation of Democrats of being mealy-mouthed.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck is that answer?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And just there is a, Democrats needed to stand up for what they believed in, not let themselves be pushed around. It's really sort of basic to me. Speak frankly and plainly, and not rely so heavily on like the incredible infrastructure that they've built around message testing and try and communicate not only 360. Like, if they were, one of the things that Donald Trump did so well was communicate and campaign basically since January 6th of 2020. Right? And he has been waging a 365-day year. He's shown up everywhere. He's been communicating every single day nonstop. Democrats keep doing this thing where it's like, okay, summertime, we're going to kick this thing off. Summertime of even years, we're going to like start talking to people. Yeah. And so you're hanging what should be an everyday strategy, a 365 days a year strategy, into 90 days. And therefore, every message, every commercial has to be able to talk to the broadest possible audience that it can, which ends up then meaning nothing, right? Like, as filmmakers, this gets harped on over and over and over again. If you try and have an audience of 100 million, you're not going to make a film that says anything or does anything. It's just too broad. And so the virtue of communicating every single day and campaigning every single day is that you can spend meaningful time in smaller slices of a demographic that all ideally coordinate with a broader message and broader set of values that you're attempting to align yourself with. But over and over, whether it was on Gaza or immigration or trans rights or whatever, watching Kamala Harris just be like, not say anything or attempt to not say anything that pissed anybody off too bad. It's just like, I mean, it's a failure of both leadership and imagination.
Well, that's why your film, I know, it's a great segue to why this film is so important for everyone to watch. How can people watch it? You're premiered at Tribeca. You're premiering tonight here in Washington, D.C. What's the journey of the film right now?
We are excited to be on the journey. The destination is still unknown.
Amazing.
We will be going to other festivals. We hope to land on screens and platforms that make it very easy for you to click and watch. And hopefully we are one Google away from that information.
I want to, we were talking to your entourage before we started filming, but I definitely want to include a clip in the clips that we do, if possible, because this show is obviously visual, but it's such a beautiful film.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten so dressed up.
I know, exactly.
Maybe I would have.
Really honored to be here in proximity to your outfit.
Thank you so much for being with us. This
so
is
happy to be here.
So great. And I get a little starstruck around Chase because Chase might be the smartest person I actually know. And like, I fancy myself as being quite smart and quite articulate. And just like hang out with Chase. I'm just like, damn it.
That's why that's why you dressed up.
That's why I hang out with you, you know? Yeah, I know. It's like, if I got nothing else, I'll put on a dress.
Flattery will get you everywhere.
With me as well. I'm an absolute words of affirmations adherent. So
congrats again on the film.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Are there
having me.
other people, you mentioned your DP, are there other people you want to shout out who are part of the filmmaking
Yes,
crew?
we would not be here without XTR and Optimist and Level Ground Productions, production companies who took big swings on political verite documentary in a moment where political verite documentary is not necessarily understood as the true crime slam dunk of the streaming era. Our editor, Chris McNabb, who is a New York-based genius architect of moving image, deserves all the shout outs. And
your music supervision was great. I loved the music choices.
Our composer, his name is Becky Gebhardt, is, in my opinion, an up-and-coming music composition star.
So good. Well, congrats again. We're going to get this up as soon as possible because your film's premiering. And where can people follow your work? Are you on all the Instagrams and the socials and all that good stuff?
I am definitely on just the Instagram, and it's just my name, .com.
Wait, .com.
Oh, wait, that's a different website.
It's very, very good at social.
Yes, so
very
really
good on the
it's,
internet.
really in my groove. Promotion and social media. Yeah.
Well, congrats. Chase.
Thank you,
It's
Bill.
so great, man.
Really happy to be here.
All right.
Oh! Yes. Studio audience. I just love it.
Studio audience. We should have opened it up to the studio
Yes.
God, it's not too late.
audience. Live
It's
studio
not too late.
audience.
Do we have any questions?
We're still rolling.